You are listening to the Getting Lucky Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I am your host, Lucky Robert Curtis. Today is a Cage Chat, episode 25. I am joined by English Tom Burton.
Hello, guys.
Hello, hello. How is it in merry old England?
Well, it was snowing a couple of hours ago, but unfortunately we're back to the same old dreary old weather.
When it snows in England, does it stick?
Well, yeah, it depends on how much snow we get. I mean, a couple of weeks ago we had probably 3 days of snow, but it wasn't too bad.
So you're southern England. How much snow on the ground do you get per year?
Not much. Do you want it in centimeters? Because I think.
How many days?
How many days?
Yeah.
Well, normally it would probably just be one day a year.
One a year. Okay.
And
how much to say like the north of Scotland? Do those guys get a lot more snow?
It's pretty much, it looks like Norway or something like that.
All right. That is your Britain Weather Report, brought to you by English Tom. We're in Australia, and we don't ever see snow. Ever. In fact, we hardly ever see rain. So this is Australia is like the British man's Florida. They all come here when they retire. The first thing I want to talk about today was this idea of self-imposed internet exile. Whenever a fighter loses, they stop Twittering, they stop doing Facebook, they stop doing everything because they're in their what does Superman call it? His layer of solitude.
Oh, I don't read Superman.
Yeah, I'm a Marvel guy.
Yeah, I'm the
so
same.
DC references are a bit whatever. His layer of solitude, his fortress of solitude. Got it. For instance, John Fitch, active guy on the internet, active guy on Twitter, putting out links from Anonymous. I chat with him, a couple times a week about various things, never about fighting. Superheroes, Wolverine being one of them. But he lost to Damian Maya, and he's since been AWOL from the internet as he contemplates his shame and failure. Now, my question to you, and we talked a little bit about this before, how long should a fighter self-impose himself into this banishment?
Oh. Well, I hope he doesn't go completely AWOL or something. I mean, he's not having being all bitchy about it like Nick Diaz is. He's just completely locked himself away, probably from his camp, his friends. But I have a feeling that it probably won't last too long.
But I'm not talking about John Fitch in particular. I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
When a fighter loses, what's the acceptable amount of dead air they're allowed to broadcast before it becomes an issue? I'm thinking 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks is a good idea.
Yeah. Alistair Overeem, after his loss to Bigfoot Silva, as I mentioned in the last two shows, we have not been very big on Alistair Overeem lately. He tweeted out, "Arg!" with an exclamation point. That's too soon. He did it within like an hour of losing. Like, no, you look like a twat when you do that.
It sounded fake as well.
Yeah, to use a British, which brings me straight into my next point. Hear this card?
Yep.
I got my little card here with all my notes written on it, just like David Letterman's top 10 list. Anyway, some people believe that Alistair Overeem taking a nap when fighting Bigfoot Silva is proof, definitive conspiratorial Illuminati proof of fight fixing. What do you think?
I think MMA is too early in its stages to be fixing fights, unlike in Japan. But in the UFC, I don't know. I don't think there's enough money in it at the moment and enough popularity in general.
One of the reasons that boxing was so easily fixed was that they had a lot of different power groups involved with it. You had commissions, you had sanctioning bodies, you had individual promoters, and you had all these different fighters that were coming on a one-fight deal.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight this guy, and this is what I'm going to get paid. The UFC is a closed system. They control all the fighters. They control everything. And so having the UFC say, listen, we're going to have Anderson Silva take a dive against John Jones. what's the benefit?
There is no benefit.
I mean, the only way that this would work for fixing a fight is if the UFC could somehow, or the fighter himself could somehow massively benefit from gambling.
Yeah.
And that would immediately raise flags. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll completely ruin your reputation, and they'll probably never be able to put on any more fights. The only chance we'd see it is if all of their owners, Dana, Lorenzo, Frank, Fertitta, they all decide to just retire and just, fix a fight and just retire on the winnings.
Yeah, and that's ludicrous. They're making so much cash, and there's more cash out there to make. So the implication that the UFC itself is fixing fights is ludicrous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely silly. I mean, there have been so many fights that have not gone the way the UFC wanted that I think it's fairly evident. The other thing that you can tell about fight fixing is this. When a guy is going to lose a fight on purpose, he does not get completely glassed. He loses in a way that he will not get hurt. Mm-hmm. When Alistair Overeem ate 8 shots to the face and was literally in La La Land as they did the post-fight announcement, congratulations, Bigfoot Silva, and he's off staring into to the Middle Ages. That's not how you throw a fight, because fighters aren't stupid. They realize you can only take a few of those in a career. Yeah. Alistair's probably taken 10. If you're going to lose a fight, you're going to get yourself into an armbar and tap super quick. Yeah. That's not fixing a fight. If you were to fix a fight, how would you do it? If you were one of the fighters?
Oh, I don't know. I'd probably let them take my back or something.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a rear naked choke is the way to go, because you don't. The risk of a knee bar, arm bar, whatever, if you get some jackass on there like Toquinho, is that you actually injure yourself and damage your career. Giving up the rear naked choke, I think, would probably be the best, safest.
Yes, safest.
As silly as that sounds. I try to lose by disqualification. I just repeatedly kick my guy in the groin. Although I do think that would void gambling results, right? If you kick the guy in the groin 8 times in a round, and then you finally said, okay, that's it, you're DQ'd. I think that null and voids all the gambling action, right? Yeah, I think so. So you're right. Rear naked choke is the way to go. Choke me out. Speaking of cheating and fight fixing, let's talk about TRT. Kind of been a hot topic there in England, because Vitor finally came out that he is officially TRTing, which is Testosterone Replacement Therapy, meaning his body does not produce enough natural testosterone, that he has been medically approved to take testosterone externally to reach a normal level for the average athlete. Before I get into my little point, I think I have a fairly unique point of view here. What do you think about that? TRT as a systematic, whatever you want to call it, plague, natural medicine, whatever, in mixed martial arts. Fair or not fair?
Well, I think it's a bit ridiculous that former steroid abusers can get this drug and use it legally, and it can also be used to help your performance in a fight. So in my opinion, during a fight camp and the weeks leading up to the fight, I don't think I would like to see fighters using it. Another point I'd like to mention, though, is Vitor's opponent, Michael Bisping. When he found out, I have to congratulate him on not, throwing a complete hissy fit, bitching out about, oh my god, he was on TRT, he screwed me out of my title shot. He took the loss pretty well, and he congratulated him as well.
One thing about Bisping, he's got 5 losses, and 3 out of his last 4 losses come to guys that are on TRT. Belfort, Sonnen, and Henderson.
Yeah.
That's pretty telling. Well, this is what I think. I think that, and to your point, what you're saying is that people that abuse steroids burn out their ability to produce their own testosterone.
Yeah.
So it is a cause and effect, most likely and most often, of people that have abused steroids early in their career, and as a result, their body stops producing testosterone because there's so much of it in their system already. And so now they have to take testosterone just to be normal.
Yeah.
That's what your point is.
Yeah.
Here's my opinion. We have a group of older fighters, Vitor, Sonnen, Henderson, older fighters, maybe even Barnett, that fought in the wild, wild west of MMA before everything was systematized, before we had the unified rules. People were fighting in Japan, they're fighting in Brazil. It was literally anarchy. And in Japan, there was fight fixing, there was no drug testing, nothing. And people just used it because you'd be stupid not to. You know, like if you're going against Mark Kerr and you are not on the sauce, you're a moron because he is juiced out of his mind. Now, that's not cheating. Back then, it wasn't cheating because no one was testing for it. You weren't sort of evading results. So you can't call someone like Vitor, well, I guess you can call Vitor, but you can't call like someone like Dan Henderson a cheat because he wasn't cheating under the rules at that time. He was using steroids, and I believe firmly that a lot of guys, maybe all of them, were cycling on and off stuff in Pride and Pancrase and all that stuff when it was literally the Wild West. It was a bad spaghetti western. Now, these are the names that built this sport. Vitor, maybe even Vanderlei, Dan Henderson. The current success of MMA is predicated off of these guys using steroids. Would it have been as successful if they weren't? Sure. But the environment that these stars rose up in, it was a steroid fight culture. So unless you want to say bye-bye to all the guys that made this sport, which are the biggest names still in MMA, with a few exceptions.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, listen, I agree Anderson Silva doesn't use steroids. He doesn't, I mean, from the stupid visual test, he's never been a bulky, muscular guy. But just think of how many guys, like literally, if you're on testosterone replacement therapy, or you have ever used steroids, and we'll go back and we'll find out, we'll dig, and you're out of the sport forever, I'm telling you, that's like half of the guys in the UFC at least. So I don't think testosterone replacement therapy is something we should be expecting to be doing in 20 years. I think it's a bridge from the steroid era to the cleaner era. And once those guys that burnt out their own bodies on steroids get older and retire, that should be it, and it should be gone.
Yeah, I'm still not sold on the idea. I still think that if you abuse steroids, it's your own fault, and you chose to be in that environment. But that was the fight environment across the board. I agree, it was the environment, but still, I'm not sold on TRT at all.
So you're saying a guy like Vitor, let's not use Vitor because Vitor is actually popped for steroids when he was being tested. Let's use a guy like Dan Henderson. Let's say Dan Henderson was fighting in a sport and everyone was using steroids. Like, and you can just visually look at guys like Vitor and see his difference as a 20-year-old to now. Well, not now, before the Bisping fight. Or Vanderlei Silva. You're saying he chose to be a fighter, he chose to use steroids when everyone was using it, and he built his name off of victories, not losses, not being Mr. Courageous and getting his face beat in. He built his name off of victory and using a level competition when everyone was using. You're thinking now Dan Henderson should be out of the sport.
Well, he is on his way out, in my opinion.
Because he's 40.
I know.
Not because of drugs. Because he's 40.
Because he's 40, I know, but I still don't think it's fair to say, you know, these guys were allowed to use TRT in the past because of their mistakes, and then you're telling...
It's not mistakes, that's what I'm saying. They weren't cheating back then. No one tested for it. I mean, these guys were fighting in Japan. Japan could give fuck all about steroids.
Yeah, that's true, but when it was when did the Zuffa buy the UFC? Because that's when I believe testing.
I think it was around UFC 37,
yeah,
right around there.
I know it was UFC 37, but I think what year was it? Was it 03?
I'll look it up.
Because that's 10 years ago.
2002, 10 plus years.
So that's 10 years ago. So you can't tell me that, Dan Henderson could have left Pride, could have left this steroid environment and joined the UFC.
But why would he take a backward step in his career? Because we know Pride was where it was at.
I know. It's a difficult argument to make.
Exactly. A lot of people want to make this as a black and white issue. Like, for instance, this guy has been cheating and he's been being tested and he only now just got caught. That makes him a cheater forever. Fuck him. Get him out of the sport. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's really not that simple. These guys were fighting in environment where there were no regulations. Fights were fixed. People were steroiding like crazy. In fact, I think guys like Sakuraba, this is the greater tragedy. Guys like Sakuraba were being thrown into like a cattle car and just getting their asses kicked for the spectator. There was no sport in watching Sakuraba fight a guy 80 pounds heavier than him. But, with that being said, it does leave a very sour taste in my mouth to look at Bisping's losses and say, wow, 3 of those guys were guys on testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, it's difficult for me because I grew up with mostly British MMA, and I don't think we had the same steroid culture that you have in with the United States and Japan. United States fighters fighting in Japan and being on steroids.
Or Brazilians.
Yeah, and Brazilians as well. So I mean, it's a difficult issue. I'd have to agree with you there that it's definitely not a black and white issue.
Yeah, it's very complicated,
Yeah.
and just making a singular stance on this, I think, is completely unfair because you have to look at the growth and history of mixed martial arts as a sport that we all now love. Steroids helped build this sport.
It's a real shame about that.
I mean, it's the truth.
Yeah, because I love Pride. I've got all the DVDs. I watched all the events, and it's just a real shame that it was this shadow of steroids just over.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Do you think? Let's talk about steroids as a shadow, as a negative influence.
Yeah.
Now, let's say, do you look at testosterone, which has obviously physical advantages in the ring and then negative advantages throughout the rest of your life? Is that a good or bad drug or chemical?
Well, if testosterone is used as a performance enhancer, then yeah.
Okay. What about, and let's just be silly here, what about aspirin? The guy is hurt, his muscles are fatigued, he takes aspirin, he can train again. That's a drug, and that will ultimately lead to... I mean, where do we draw the line? I agree testosterone is crossed the line, but let's look at HGH. When a fighter gets injured, like say during camp, and he injects HGH into that muscle injury or ligament or whatever, and that HGH helps him recover quickly, how is that not medicine? When does it become a PED?
Yeah, it's. I think most doctors don't understand what's legal and what's not to use.
But I mean, why is it illegal is what I'm saying. Like, grandmothers are given HGH to help them counter aging effects, and other sort of age-related ailments. Why do they get to use it and fighters don't? And a lot of this is... blood doping, I think, is wrong. It's cycling out someone's blood, loading it with oxygen, and putting it back in. That's clearly silly. EPO... I think that's silly too. But HGH, another sort of... I mean, there's not a lot of logic to me as to why some stuff is illegal and some stuff isn't. Like, why is creatine legal?
Yeah. I mean...
What do you think?
there's also the question of, with marijuana being legalized for medicinal use, if you're taking your medicine in California where it's legal, but then you're fighting in Nevada where it's illegal, I mean, are you going to tell the fighters to not take their medicine?
And marijuana is not a performance-enhancing drug.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. It doesn't make you faster. It doesn't make you more skillful. It doesn't make you stronger. It doesn't give you longer endurance. Why? Why is that not allowed for fighters? This is not a good citizenship test, right? Like if you've got cocaine in your system, you shouldn't be allowed to fight because that's illegal.
Yeah.
Like no, it's you have to catch them as part of law enforcement, not screen them before they can fight. I mean, that guy's not on cocaine in the ring, is he? That would be wrong. I don't understand. I think the American drug policeman culture is completely. It has no rhyme or reason to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
What would you suggest? Would you go everything's legal, everyone can do whatever you want, no complaining?
I think.
Or would you make these guys live like Buddhist monks and they have to live like on vegan diets? Like that's the other extreme.
I think that if you're using, whether it's legal or not, if you're using whatever drugs you're taking to enhance your performance, if let's say you take it the night before the fight or backstage before the fight and you're using it to enhance your performance, that's illegal. But if you're using it in a fight camp maybe 4 weeks before and you've had it prescribed by your doctor, I think that should be legal.
So you don't have a problem with TRT then?
Yeah.
'Cause that's exactly what you just stated.
I know, but if
But
are they? I mean, I don't understand like how. I guess I'm not well informed on this subject, but.
So what, are you saying that if you don't have a problem with Vitor being on TRT, just so long as everyone could be on TRT?
No, I said if it was prescribed by his doctor.
Right. If Bisping said, "Listen, I'm a fighter and I want more testosterone. Put me on TRT, please, doctor," and the doctor says, "Sure."
I don't know. I guess I'm not as well informed as you, Rob.
That's right.
Because we don't
and
have
you
these
remember
drug
that.
problems in the UK.
Oh yeah. Your drug of choice in England, what? Beer?
Yeah.
Mead? Ale?
Ale. Stout.
Yes. Stout. What's your drug culture over there? Is it meth? It's meth in Australia.
Ecstasy and speed.
Ecstasy and speed.
Yeah.
Ecstasy and spade. I have a little piece of news. If you have any news bits you want to share, Cyborg wants out of her UFC contract. Tito Ortiz, looking very much like he's in an Apple versus PC commercial, stated she could make 140, but by golly, she can't make 135. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, just to reiterate what you said, it was actually a quote from YouTube, and the actual quote was, "Tito looks like he got raped by an Apple store."
Yes. I don't know why Cyborg has Tito as her manager.
Oh.
All he wants to do is talk about himself. That's why he can't be an announcer, because he keeps bringing the narrative back to himself being the people's champion and putting everything out there for the fans of Team Punishment. You got any news and notes?
No, that was actually my news that I was going to announce on it.
I have another.
Ooh.
I have another one. Friend of the show, John Moraga, gets the next flyweight title shot for Demetrius Johnson. Woo woo! Go Moraga!
Cool.
Go Moraga! Yeah, I doubt we'll ever get him on the show again.
As soon as they rise up, they just leave us behind.
Yeah, that's right. We're like the jilted lover standing there at the altar. Barnett, still no UFC contract, and I believe we talked about this in the last show, but I want to get your reaction to it. Aldo, Pettis confirmed August 3rd.
Yeah. I mean,
what do you think?
I think my reaction is the same as most of the MMA community. My first thought is, holy shit, what a fight! Stylistically, it's so perfect.
Yes, instant boner.
Because it's it's traditional Muay Thai with the leg kicks against the flashy Taekwondo style of Anthony Pettis.
Yeah, and two striking geniuses
Yeah.
with superb athleticism. Yeah, it'll be great.
Any fight where Anthony Pettis isn't fighting a wrestler is a fucking good fight.
I love how you say Anthony.
Anthony.
Anytime Anthony Pettis. Do you think it's a super fight? Mitchell insists that super fights are more rare than we like to think.
Yeah. I think I like to reserve super fights for champion versus champion. But I would call it like a huge fight. Like the level below super fight.
Mega fight.
Yeah.
Mega fight.
Mega fight.
Or can we go with kilo fight? Is that too metric for our audience, do you think?
Probably.
Well, it's a short show. We don't have a fight to talk about or prelims or anything, but we will next show. We will preview the Wembley show in England.
Wembley.
And hopefully I think that's what I said.
No. Are we going to hear this terrible English accent throughout the whole show next week?
Oh, indeed. Indeed we will.
Oh, dear.
Alright, this is Lucky Rob saying, top of the morning to you, governor. And on me friend, English Tom. This is where you say something.
Goodbye, everyone.
Is that you trying to do an American accent?
No, I'm just depressed about the thought of you putting on that accent next week.
You know I have to, but only because I love you. Alright, ladies and gents, we will see you next time.